My life in Seaview was a carefully curated still life. It was a small, salt-weathered town clinging to the coast, a place where the main street ended in a sweep of grey-blue ocean, and the air always carried the tang of brine and promise. My days were measured in the drip of the coffee machine, the familiar weight of books in my hands, and the rhythmic sigh of the waves from my small cottage. It was a quiet, safe existence. I had built it that way, brick by brick, after a series of disappointments that had left me feeling frayed. I told myself I preferred the solitude, the predictability. The biggest risk I took was walking on the beach after a storm, navigating the slick, kelp-strewn rocks. I mistook that safety for contentment. Then I met Leo in the town's only proper bookstore, the Quiet Page. It was a Tuesday, rain smearing the windows, turning the outside world into a watercolor blur. I was reaching for a collection of Mary Oliver poems, and his hand touched mine on the same shelf. A simple, electric accident. He apologized with a soft laugh, and his eyes were the color of the sea under a winter sky, kind and deep. He wasn't like anyone in Seaview. He had a gentleness to him, a stillness that felt profound. Our conversation over lukewarm coffee at the adjacent cafe was easy, flowing like the rain down the pane. He was a graphic designer who worked remotely, he said, and had recently moved to a rental just outside town for the peace. He listened, truly listened in a way that made me feel like my thoughts were the most fascinating things he'd ever encountered. He felt like a sanctuary. The reveal didn't come as a dramatic confession. It was a slow, chilling seep of truth, like cold water through a crack in a boat. It was in the way he never invited me to his place, the way his phone was always face down, the specific hours he was unavailable. I pieced it together before he said the words, my stomach a hard knot of dread. We were walking on the beach, the wind whipping my hair across my face, when he finally stopped and told me. His voice was low, strained. A wife, 2 children, a life in the city just an hour away. That was complicated, loveless, a shell he stayed in for the kids. But this, he said, gesturing to the vast, tumultuous ocean, to me, this is real. You are real. I should have turned and walked away, but he looked so broken, so genuinely torn, and in my foolish heart, I mistook his pain for depth. I mistook the secret for a sacred bond. Our world became a constellation of stolen moments. He was a ghost in my life, and I was a secret in his. Our relationship existed in the hushed spaces between his real one. Tuesday afternoons when my shop was closed, late-night whispers in my cottage, when the town was asleep, frantic hour-long lunches, where the food went cold because we were too busy trying to consume each other. There was a desperate warmth to it, an intensity that felt like love but was probably just the adrenaline of transgression. The guilt was a constant companion, a sour taste in the back of my throat, especially when he'd mention his daughter S. ballet recital or his son S. school play. I'd picture a woman in the city, a woman who had no face but whose life I was helping to unravel. Yet, when he was with me, he was so present, so devoted. He made me feel chosen, special. It was a drug, and the crash was always just around the corner. The decline was gradual. My safe, curated life began to shrink, its borders defined by his availability. I stopped accepting invitations from friends, afraid I might miss his call. My walks on the beach became solitary vigils, my phone a heavy weight in my hand. I was always waiting. The sound of a car engine on my quiet street would send my heart into a frantic rhythm, only for it to plummet when it passed by. The cozy cottage started to feel like a gilded cage. I saw less of the ocean and more of the 4 walls that contained my hope and my shame. The vibrant colors of Seaview seemed to bleach out, leaving everything in shades of gray. I was living on scraps of affection, and I was starving. The turning point came from my friend Clara, who owned the bakery. She hadn't seen me in weeks. She cornered me one morning, her kind face etched with concern. "You've disappeared," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. Is it a man?" I gave a weak, evasive answer, but she saw right through me. She didn't press for details. Instead, she said something that lodged in my brain like a splinter. Love shouldn't feel like a hiding place. It should feel like a home. That night, after Leo left, after a rushed goodbye, a kiss that tasted of duty and distraction, I looked around my empty cottage. It wasn't a home. It was a waiting room. And I was tired of waiting for a life that would never truly be mine. The reflection in the window showed a woman I barely recognized, pale and haunted. The love I had thought was deep and tragic was just cheap and damaging. It wasn't about his wife or his children anymore. It was about me. Ending it was the hardest, most dignified thing I have ever done. I didn't scream or cry. I didn't list his betrayals. When he came over the next Tuesday, expecting the usual sanctuary, I was calm. I told him I could no longer be a secret, that I deserved a love that could walk in the sunlight. He was shocked, then pleading. He promised a future I knew in my bones would never come. He spoke of leaving, of a time when the kids were older. They were the same hollow promises he'd used to build my prison. I held my ground. My voice didn't shake. When he left, the silence in the cottage was immense, a physical presence. It wasn't a peaceful silence at first. It was a roaring, painful emptiness, but it was mine. Healing was not a linear path. It was a slow, deliberate reconstruction. The first week, I forced myself to go to Clara's bakery and sit at a table in the window. I reconnected with friends, apologizing for my absence with vague excuses they graciously accepted. I picked up my neglected camera and started walking the beaches again, not waiting for anyone, just watching the light change on the water. I signed up for a writing class at the community center, filling notebooks with my own words instead of waiting for his texts. The guilt and the ache began to recede, like a tide pulling back, leaving behind a cleaner, stronger shore. I learned to breathe again, deeply and fully, the sea air scouring me clean from the inside out. Months later, in that same writing class, I met David. He was quiet, with a patient smile and eyes that held no stormy secrets. Our conversations were easy, but they unfolded in the open. He asked me to coffee in the bright light of a Saturday afternoon. He talked about his life, his work as a teacher, his recent amicable divorce with a transparency that was both startling and soothing. There were no hidden compartments, no frantic energy. Being with him felt calm, safe. It felt like coming home after a long, arduous journey through a treacherous landscape. I know now that the heart I thought was dark was simply lost, and the love I thought was deadly was merely sick. Leo and I were two wounded people trying to find warmth in a shared shadow, but shadows offer no sustenance. What I have now with David is different. It is not a raging fire that threatens to consume everything in its path. It is a steady, reliable hearth. It is a love that asks for no secrets, demands no sacrifices of my soul. It is open and honest, and it allows me to be whole. I walk along the same shore, but the ocean sounds different now. Not a lament, but a lullaby. I have learned that the most profound love is not the one that makes your heart race with fear, but the one that allows it to beat in a steady, peaceful rhythm. It is the quiet understanding that after a lifetime of storms, you have finally found a safe harbor, and the greatest adventure is not in the leaving, but in the staying. If stories like this resonate, subscribe for more.